Hello there, Final Fantasy fans. I'm Jackie Fox, and today we're going to be looking at clears for the Pumpkin Fest. Now, we only have EX2 so far, so EX3 should be coming with additional titles and rewards as a Part 2 reward, which we should be getting another weapon. Hopefully it's the Pumpkin Axe. For Glenn. That would be really cool. Maybe even the pumpkin costume for Glenn. I would be super excited about it. This is the team that I cleared this with earlier. You'll be able to see that fight and a bit of that build as well. But I actually think it's a lot faster, especially if you have the damage to go with Tifa. And that's going to be because of additional breaks. So let's just rush right into this, and I can show you what those breaks look like before we take a look at the build. However, to keep this particular fight as fast as possible, I'm just not going to heal with Aerith. We're going to try to DPS race this thing all the way down. That's a mistake. That is genuinely a mistake. I forgot to heal in this fight. I forgot that I was playing the healer. But I think that kind of demonstrates that even if you've got kind of the ideal all-around DPS, you can break all of the defenses, you can even put those defenses negative, you still don't have enough damage even with good defense to really be able to do this without you don't necessarily need an AoE healer, but you're gonna need a lot more healing uptime if you're trying to do this with single target heals. Although you would be able to pick and choose who needs it the most, but this is a primarily AoE fight, so in terms of where the big damage is coming from, so you really want to be concerned with that. But also, I'm just kind of tunneling in straight into the main body. I ignore the ads. It'll eat and shit those out as it pleases. That's perfectly fine. They don't really do a lot of damage to me, and there are some negatives to that strategy, but as you can see right now, we are 2 tiers down in everything that is relevant. This guy doesn't have physical attacks, so out of the 4 stats that we can break, we have 3 of them down, 2 tiers out of I think 3 or maybe more. I need to switch out of defense. I am not noticing that I'm not switching out of defense, so there's another big mistake. Although, like, I also did just get trucked because I just realized that I'd forgotten to heal. But look, we got like halfway through the HP bar before my team really started getting housed. So that's going to be another benefit for this team, though, because if you don't have the fairy tale, it's also possible that you have the lifeguard wraps. And that means that either Tifa or Aerith could be your healer here. And in terms of like what Sephiroth is doing here, honestly, not a lot. He just does damage. He has a wind skill. There are other characters that have wind skills, some even that have AoE wind skills that you could substitute in for him. He just happens to, and I just happen to have the clothing for it, kind of the additional wind potency from clothing, which is beneficial for him. You could also use Aerith's last purchasable, I guess, pitiable outfit, which is also going to give her wind potency as well. But I'm using actually the Torn Wing as my primary weapon, and my Dark Heavens is, I've only pulled 1 copy of it, so it's still pretty weak. But you can see that that's a 440 mod, which is going to be a lot higher than a lot of other things, and because I have the Garb to go with it, for my R abilities, I should have pretty good wind potency. But you can see that even some of the stronger Aurora Blow just isn't cracking 300, so 440 is a significant mod, but it's not even the highest on this team. And again, in part, that's because I haven't pulled a second Dark Heavens, and I'm not really going to spend any more on this banner. I got the outfit I wanted, I'm done. I guess I'll maybe wishlist the Dark Heavens and try to get to that in the future, but for right now, not even the most impressive DPS on my team. I could definitely use someone else. That would also maybe encourage me to use, like, I could bring Cloud back into this team, potentially. He just doesn't have a wind weapon. I really need a wind weapon. And also, if you do have a stronger Dark Heavens, this is going to nerf my stats a lot doing this, as you can see. Sigil Break Circle is the third S ability on this sword, so it's really, really well versed for this fight. And the same is actually true also of the Prism Rod for Aerith, so if you got the last rod for her, that's really cool. In fact, you could turn the Aerith on this team into a DPS, and also turn the Tifa into the healer to replace her. By switching, I think, Fairy Tail for the Prism Rod on Aerith, and then switching, I mean, depending on if you want the breaks for magic attack or the damage more, you could have all three of them doing damage, because she does have the best damage modifier on the team. So you probably want to keep the motor drive, I would say, but also I'm also running Tiger Fangs for the magic break, so very important set there on Tifa, and luckily the ones that I've pulled for her. Also, I'm running Ardent Flare on Sephiroth. You'll see, as you saw in the first fight, that's going to be a really big boost to all of his damage, so that's a way for him to buff himself mid-fight without using ATB, and I'm going to hopefully be able to chain that in with other skills for the most damage. But for Aerith, I'm going to use a heal that enables me to have less turns I need to be up for AoE healing, because I can do that without ATB. Night Bloom is going to be the big deal here. This is going to both break physical defense and magical defense, so one tier at a time, and it can break to -2. So it's going to take a total of 5 hits to bring this thing all by herself, to bring this thing down from full defensive peak to negative defensive peak. But that's why Tifa's here. As you can see, Tifa certainly has stats, not like DPS stats necessarily, but with the motor drive we have a 500% physical damage mod for wind. That's gonna be really powerful. And with the Tiger Fangs, this is actually going to break 2 tiers of magic attack. So as you'll see in another build where I'm not using Tifa, where I'm using D-Faith instead, I can only break 1 tier of magic attack at a time. I think I might be able to break 2 total, but I think that might also be capped at 1. This is just way better for that as well. Typically, if you have an ability on a weapon, it beats the ability that you have on materia. But additionally, and this is probably the biggest thing for me on Tifa, is Somersault. This is going to break 2 tiers of physical and magical defense. This will, with 1 Night Bloom, take them from full defenses to no defenses. And really, you can break them down pretty fast and do a lot of damage to the boss pretty quickly if you'll do this. So, another thing that you will notice from the other build that I'm not running is any sort of AoE magic defense, and that's just because I'm getting 2 tiers of magic attack break with Tifa. This is maybe going to make my team a little bit less safe, especially to magic debuffs, as like magic defense buffs can actually remove those in the same way that I'm going to be doing with debuffs to remove their buffs. They work kind of in inverse to each other, so they can cancel each other out, essentially. So we've already broken 1 tier. Here's the second Night Bloom. We're going to break another tier. Glacial Breath is only about halfway, so we probably have time to break that final tier, because it looks like Tifa isn't going to be up in time. So we are at neutral defenses going into this. Unfortunately, Tifa has not used the magic attack break skill, but we did get into defense, so we took some damage there. I need to switch back to defense to play healer, and now we have Somersault up. So I believe we were at neutral defenses before this, so this should give us maximum negative defenses at this point. So now is the time to really pour in as much damage as possible for everybody. There is no further we can break. We just got in. No, that was a Sonic Spiral. So unfortunately, we're still not going to have the upper shot active for the magic breaks. You may have to switch to Tifa a little bit more than I have been to get that pulled off. Oh no, we did. Oh no, we did. Okay, so that is pretty important. just because this boss can deal out some pretty hefty damage if you're not breaking attack or if you're not building barriers. So just as another test run, that kind of proves how much we do need that magic attack break. If you think about doing this without the Tiger Fangs or without Defaith, that is too another crucial and important part of this puzzle. But I think with that, we should have all of the things established that we need to win this fight. You've got to remember to heal, and you've got to remember to break magical attack, and otherwise, you know, just break defenses and go for damage as quickly as possible. As long as you're remembering to do those two other things and you're focusing entirely on the big boy and not the dorks, you should be fine. So second tier down, we have one tier to go. As you can see, Tifa has already broke the magic here. I think that should be able to hold out until the attack comes through, which is good because I don't think I got into defense for that. That was, we just face tanked that. Sephiroth barely. Off of the strength of Tiger Claws, Tiger Fangs. I forget which they are. It was not the ideal way to go, but it worked. That proves just how powerful 2 tiers of magic attack breaking can be in your survivability in this fight. Because it's kind of similar if you magic attack break the big boss. That's kind of similar to putting 2 tiers of defense on your team. So this is an easy way to offensively do the same kind of things that Cloud's Barrier is doing for your party, like the new Cloud Sword, but without having to pull for that thing, because I'm still not feeling it. So we have a Somersault here. That's going to help break 2 tiers of that down. Now all I need is 1 Night Bloom to get back to neutral. We have already broken the magic attack, so I'm not even going to worry about these sigils for right now. Part of me wants to go ahead and go in on the Ardent Flare, but I also kind of want to save that for right before we, or right as soon as we enter the interrupt state. So I probably could have held off just a little bit longer to get everybody else's LBs up and do max damage here, but I also want him to get this buff up sooner rather than later so that he can drive in with as much damage as possible. But holy shit, they came up right after he went off, and in retrospect, watching this is a little bit cringe, but at the same time, it will take Tifa a little while to get up. And you know, because of the strength of the buffs and the debuffs, a lot of these skills, you should get them active as soon as possible. Especially because Tifa's, like, doesn't do a lot of damage anyways. And that's also not necessarily the point of Sephiroth's either. And it's definitely not the point of Aerith, since she's using an AoE heal. So these are actually the best LBs to be used independent of each other. And that's not a thing that you're necessarily going to have if you're trying to beat this with Esper damage, because the Esper damage strategy, especially since one of the Espers that you can easily farm is resisted by this whole party, that's really going to be the only way that they can build up, is to build up that combo gauge. You get that 1.25 modifier. This can work without it because it's not necessarily the damage you're doing in LB combos that's winning for you, or summon combos. It's the damage that you're doing all around because you're breaking their defenses. But the best way to farm for golden tickets is definitely to do it in co-op, or at least the best per fight, best per energy spent. So let's check that out. This is my Aerith build, and this is going to bring a lot of the best ofs. I'm going to be bringing Defaith, Night Bloom, Fairy Tail in case we need some healing, because I often play healers and breakers because people... My experience is everybody brings DPS to these things, and when you get into the higher levels, it can just be nice to have a healer so that you don't get damage checked. But also, people forget to bring breaks to these things, and it just speeds everything up. So I'm gonna play the breaker and the healer if I need to, but you don't take nearly as much damage in this fight, and my HP is high enough, and hopefully theirs is too. All right. So now that we've drilled down the defenses, See, it's not really generating a lot of damage. I need to get out of defense. Get out of defense, Jackie. There we go. I don't actually think that D-Faith is probably important in this fight, especially if you can do the fight previous to this. D-Faith could be important in this fight, and I'm bringing it just because other people, I can count on other people not to think of it. But really, this is more about Nightbloom because the damage here isn't like huge enough in most cases to really be all that threatening, in that this isn't like EX2 tier content. If there were a higher tier co-op version that paid better rewards or different rewards, maybe week 2 rewards or something, the D-Faith might become more important, but I think you could just get away with the Nightbloom breaks and some emergency healing and a Aurora. Also, trying to give people the opportunity to get a damage combo in, just in case their build is more based around that. Not so much that we need the heal, just trying to encourage people to give this thing a slap while it has no defenses. Even Aerith here is doing just a ton of damage with her Auroras. So just, you can see skills just eating away massive chunks of the HP bar of this thing right now. And usually that's not possible. That is all possible because I brought a ton of breaks to this party, to this battle. You could very easily get away with, if you have basically 2 physical DPSs, especially if you're running like Cloud and Sephiroth, for instance. You might be able to get away with just breaking defense. You don't have to have a multi-break like this. Something like Cloud's Hard Edge could do this for you, for instance. But I really do like the Nightbloom as a skill. This is one of the reasons I was so excited to pull for the Sun Umbrella. It's just, oh man, this is really its time to shine, and I think it's working really, really well in conjunction with Somersault, which I think a lot of people, because of its damage, really underestimate as a limit skill. And oh, that's unfortunate because it is quite useful for things like this. Alright, so here's the Cloud, Aerith, and Sephiroth team. I'm gonna switch in. This is actually the fight where I realized that Breaker Aerith was probably a better option for this team, in that Saving Grace just wasn't stacking well with Sanctuary in the way that I wanted it to. It just didn't feel very satisfying, so I said, okay, instead of building up our defenses with Aerith, I'm gonna break theirs. And, well, the rest is history. That ended up working out quite well for me. So, with a very similar build set as, really I only changed the Tifa for the most part. And even the Tifa is equipped a lot of the same things for a lot of the same reasons as Cloud would be. Let's check this fight out. Those defenses come up typically before you have your third ATB bar. So, wailing on Nightbloom from the very beginning is pretty easy because you're not going to have Nightbloom active before that's going to be important. I switched to Cloud here before the ability is active so I could be sure I had time to put in Sanctuary. However, I did not get the chance to activate that soon enough. I did put myself in defense soon enough. Got back to Aerith for the heal. But also, usually if he has the ATB and you switch to defense, you can trigger him to do that. There just wasn't quite time for him to get the casting animation off on that, unfortunately. Okay, took decent damage from the Surge. Post-Surge is kind of a terrible time to be using that, honestly, but whatever. I think I was still in the mindset of it needing to go off. Like, it still needs to go off, even though the thing that it was going off for has now passed. And see, like, we haven't really taken that much damage while it was up because I put it up after that. but I was still trying to get into the mindset of, you know, this really can be one where you can just entirely play Aerith and allow her to take those dual roles as breaker and as healer pretty seriously. And just let everybody else do the DPS and do whatever they're doing. Little unfortunate, because also in this fight I didn't realize that what the benefits would be for me staying on DPS like that. Otherwise, I think I could have got the defenses lower before the interrupt stage, and we could have done a lot more damage, especially with LBs. Our LBs certainly could have landed on the right side of some breaks in a way that would have helped this fight out a lot. But hey, we cleared it pretty well regardless. So there we go. And even get the S rank clear. I think that was my first S rank clear on this. So, best of luck to you, and I hope you can get your S clears as well. A few notes on honorable mentions or other builds that might be available to you depending on what you've pulled so far, because that could highly depend on just your luck and what's been on your wish list. But I do want to mention that Lucia and Zac both have AoE wind skills on their on various pieces of gear, so that could be useful to you. But I really don't think that you should bother with the Dorky Pumpkins at all. You should just focus on the Dark Army leader, because especially with single target breaks on them, it just really doesn't make sense. You're not doing the same kind of damage to the others as you're doing to the... Why would you even focus on it at all? And there are some benefits to that, but it's just not the strategy that I favor. But it's important to note that both of them have that. I would personally think that Lucia is a little bit more tempting to me in some ways, because she has the Mad Minute. And the Mad Minute is going to give you the same effects as the Tiger Fangs for Tifa. So that is similar, I would say, to something that Tifa does really effectively in my party, and I wouldn't be mad at it on another party. It's just unfortunate that Tifa would have both Somersault and the single target version of that skill, which I think is stronger in this fight. For Zac, on the other hand, I think Zac, even with his lack of a single target win skill and his AoE win skill instead, I think with the, I believe it's the Cutlass, decreases physical defense, and especially with Sephiroth being one of the better one of the better magic DPSs, but also having the Dark Heavens, which is going to make him physical. There isn't really a magic strategy for this fight necessarily. There isn't a lot of magic damage being dealt by anybody other than necessarily Aerith. So having a physical defense break here can be every bit as valuable as being able to break both magical and physical defense, because physical is where most of your damage is going to be coming from. And for that reason, the Cutlass for Zac is going to be Arc Sword is the one who does magic, so Cutlass, the Cutlass is going to be about as important, I would say, potentially as the Sun Umbrella. So for people who don't have that, didn't pull for that, or never realized that it could be useful, the Cutlass could be pretty cool for you as well. That's another way to go, and Zac might be your party member of choice. In terms of more defensive options, as I've already mentioned, you could use either Aerith or Tifa as your healer, because each of them is going to have other things that they can do, either in terms of breaks or damage, because either of them have single target win skills that are very powerful, and either of them have breaks that are very powerful that they could work into that slot in addition to heals. You also have Matt. So Matt is going to have his AoE heal as well, but he's also going to have the Core Defender, and the Core Defender is going to give you basically the same buff as Cloud's new sword, except that I think it makes so much more sense on your healer, especially if you're playing as your healer in semi or in manual. It's just good to have all of these pieces right there together, although sometimes it actually can be valuable to have those on different characters for setup reasons, because it can become a bit of a burden for just one healer to do everything. But at the same time, it's working well enough in the inverse for Aerith that I think that this strategy, as a more defensive strategy, especially if you can't muster the same DPS that I can to come into this fight. But also, like, I think a lot of people are using the Esper strategy and a lot of Esper damage, and why not? If you have that, if you're really good into that, go for it. But that's just not what I have, and maybe you could use that to make my strategy work better for you. I mean, I do actually really use all of my limit breaks. This is a very much a limit break over Esper's strategy. Ooh. Another defensive option would be Barret, both because you have the solid bazooka, which is another option if you don't have the Tiger Fangs or the Mad Minute. Another way to put in a heavy magic attack, a decrease, and make yourself more safe through debuffs than through buffing. So this is another option. But he also has basically a version of his own like solid mana ward. So he can both break the magic attack of the opponent and also support your ability to survive. The unfortunate part of this is that it's single target, and because it's single target, it'll have to be cast 3 times, and because he's also breaking the magic attack of the boss, this is just going to be a lot to ask Barret to do. But you could have him do either one of these things and something else, maybe. But really, I think these are the 2 best pieces of equipment for him, specifically for this fight, so that is a way you could go if you're a Barret main. The other big advantage to Barret, although it doesn't cast as quickly, I think, as Somersault, is Mind Blow, which is also going to give you a similar break. It's going to be really similar to Somersault. So this is another way, if you haven't really built up your Tifa, if you built up Barret instead, that you can use a limit break to break down the defenses of the Dark Army leader very, very quickly. Finally, we have Red 13. He is similarly going to be able to break magic, and I guess Lucia can do this too with the Cerulean Raven, but magic attack and physical attack with LB. I don't think this is important as the defensive breaks, but it is worth mentioning since I am mentioning like other ways of breaking magic attack. The breaking physical attack isn't really important in this fight at all for either of them, but breaking the magic attack is, so there's another way of doing that with LBs. But for Red 13, the Sleek Collar is going to give him a single target mana ward, the same as the one I was just talking about with Barret, but he also has the Junk Collar, which is going to be able to break magic attack as well. So this is more specific than his LB, and his LB is one of those skills, much like Somersault, that's going to cast really quickly compared to other LBs. So the LB could give you the ability to focus away from the Junk Collar, or you could use the Junk Collar as a way to maybe put an Esper on Red 13 instead of relying on him for LBs. But I think his LB could also be another important break here. And with that, I think I've actually covered basically everybody but Glenn. So already there's ways of using pretty much every character in this fight, so have fun, be safe, and best of luck to you in collecting all of the candy and pumpkins that your heart desires. Ways that you can beat this one, but it's going to take some of the same skills that I myself personally feel like I learned in hardcore mode from Sephiroth from playing that so many times. So if you haven't really challenged yourself like this, if you haven't gone at a fight like this, I highly encourage it, because I mean it's fun. Like, I like being on that edge of what I can do comfortably and like pushing that edge. But if you want to be able to see, like, because it's important to be able to see the tiers for this, I would say that is going to be in your settings. Go down to battle, buff and debuff icon details. Display the buff and debuff icon tiers during battle. That's what I had turned on so you could see how many tiers each person had. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please, this is YouTube. I have to tell you this. It is mandatory that you like and subscribe to this channel. I know you're not just scrolling by on like X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, or something like that, where you might just tap the button as you go by. Remember, like the video. It really, really helps the channel. And, you know, we say it because not enough people do it. So please remember to be that person today. And if you're looking for other ways to help out the channel, check out that link in the description. That's going to lead you to all sorts of ways that you can benefit me outside of just this YouTube page and clicking buttons here. But also, hey, if you want to be in a viewer response video, or you just have something to say, or you just want to say thank you and, well, like literally say thank you in the comments. The comments help quite a bit as well. So those are all great ways to support the channel for free, but you can also find ways to send money through that link in the description as well, if that's more your speed. So whatever it is to you, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.